Go.
Hi everyone, we are here in the southern area of Mount Ararat. You can actually see Mount Ararat to my left, and this is the mountains of Ararat. It says in Genesis chapter 8 where Noah's Ark landed. And what's really cool is that we're just one valley over from the Darupanar Noah's Ark site, and along this whole ridge of sedimentary rock you find fossils, mainly shallow water fossils, but there's no sea here. Again, after the flood and during the flood, the land masses were changed, mountains were uplifted and created. Areas that used to be water became land, and of course the whole earth was covered in water. And we have evidence of this global catastrophe right here, right near Noah's Ark. You see sand dollars, seashells, they're all embedded in these rocks here. Pretty cool. There you go, yeah.
But I wanted that.
Get some good close-up. Hey, welcome guys. We are here at the Noah's Ark Visitor Center. Come on in, I'll show you around. The first thing you'll notice, we have these big posters that explains the history of Noah's Ark, how the site was discovered by Captain Ilhan Darupanar in 1959, because they took these military photographs from high altitude that showed this boat formation, this boat shape right here, and it got the world excited. By 1960, we had Ara Güler, who was a famous Turkish photographer. He rented a small plane, and they flew over the site, and you can see this really nice boat shape that's sitting out there in the mud flow. Now, if you follow me over here, I'm going to show you some of the things on why we believe this to be Noah's Ark. So the first thing is, we are in the mountains of Ararat. Now, a lot of people think that the Bible says the ark landed on the big volcano Ararat. No, it says mountains, plural, in the book of Genesis. And that's the kingdom of Urartu, which is right here. And this red dot is where we're at. So we're in the middle of this mountainous kingdom, kind of like saying the ark landed in the Rocky Mountains. So that's the first key. We're in the right location. Next, you have this boat shape. In fact, when the photogrammetry expert from Ohio State University saw this, he said that this is not natural. You can't get this type of shape in nature. So you have a boat shape, and it fits Noah's Ark. Now, some people believe the ark has to be a barge or a rectangular shaped object, and that's not what the ark means. The ark, the description talks about the functionality of holding the animals and the people through the flood, not the shape of the hull. So we believe that this boat shape fits perfectly an ancient boat that's been decaying. The other thing is it matches the size in the Bible. So we're talking about 300 royal Egyptian cubits. The book of Acts says Moses was educated in Egypt. He was the prince of Egypt. And so the royal Egyptian cubit was the standard of measurement used back in that time, just like meters are today. And so this object is 515 feet long, exactly 300 royal Egyptian cubits, just what Moses wrote in the book of Genesis. And there's been different little artifacts found on the site. Back in 1991, Ron Wyatt, who did most of the research on this site in the 80s and 90s, his tour group found this fossilized rivet that has different alloys and metals in it. Very fascinating. And as you follow me to the last panel we have here, this will show you some of the underground things that have been discovered at this site. So this is the geophysical surveys. Now, the site has not been excavated. So this site, the only way we can see below the ground is using different types of technologies like GPR, which is radar, or ERT, which uses electrical resistivity to determine the shapes and size of objects below the ground. And so you can see some of the original GPR, the analog printout by Ron Wyatt and David Fasold, done in 1985. And then over here, you can see some of our, the ones we did in 2019. And this was digital, so a little more high tech. But all of these radar surveys show that there are angular shapes and patterns below the ground. As you can see here, the reflections. And the guy, he was the vice president of the manufacturer for this GPR unit. And he said, these patterns are too regular. You do not find this in nature. And the archaeologist who examined our 2019 data, he said this is the best place if he were to do an excavation, he would do it right in this area, because he said you find these angular structures about 7 meters down, about 20 feet below the surface. And over here, we were finding linear patterns about 3 meters or 9 feet below the surface. So by looking into this object, we're seeing that it's just not a natural random rubble of mud and rock. You actually see other things that suggest it's a man-made object below the ground. And so we believe this is the buried remains of Noah's Ark. Okay, guys, welcome everyone to the Nuhum Gemisi site here, Noah's Ark in English and Nuhum Gemisi in Turkish. So this is the boat formation that's 515 feet long in the mountains of Ararat. And we're about a mile below the Turkish-Iranian border, which you can see up there, the Turkish military towers on the border. And in this remote area, this is where the Turkish military photographed high-altitude aerial photographs to map out their country. And back in 1959, and on September 11, 1959, Captain Drupinar, who's a cartographer at the time with the military, drawing out the maps, he saw this boat formation way up in the air, from the sky, from the photograph that was taken about 60,000 feet. So they later investigated it in 1960. An American team came out here, and it's open to tourism now. After all the work and research done up till 1988, the Turks got really interested, and they built this visitor center, which we recently renovated. And I think the plans are that even this will be replaced with a nice new building. So come and join us someday. Come out here to the beautiful area of eastern Turkey and see this site for yourself. Welcome to the back end of Noah's Ark. So this would be the stern. And we're at the rounded end. So a couple of features I want to point out since we're here. In this eastern little canyon or valley here, about 75 feet up, this is where Ron Wyatt dug, or the Turkish soldier dug out the deck timber that they gave to Ron to test. That was done in 1987. And then straight up the valley a little further to where the snow is, or more snow, that is where our 2019 GPR scan showed linear features about 3 meters down, or 9 feet. Now in this western valley here, almost for the whole area of it, the 2019 scans were showing about 7 meters down, or 21 feet. It was showing angular reflections or structures, and that's when the archaeologist suggested this would be a great place for an excavation, because he said normally you wouldn't see that naturally. The other thing I want to point out is that maybe, I don't know if you can see in the video, but these edges are pretty jagged, but the size and shape of this boat object has always remained the same since this first was photographed in 1959. But you can tell there's a drop off here about 20 to 30 feet on the eastern and western sides of the boat. And in 1979, an earthquake hit the area and kind of dropped the soil away. It kind of liquefied it and made like a mud flow around it. And so that further exposed this boat-shaped object. And that was 1979. So on Ron's second trip here, he took a photograph showing how the boat had kind of popped out of the ground.